Okay. The conservatives who are here, how well, the conservatives, I'm sorry, the conservatives who are here at the young Jewish conservatives meeting, how well are their positions represented at the AIPAC policy conference?
I would think that all of us here agree that having an AIPAC conference in D.C. is an important gathering. 15 to 17,000 Jewish people supporting Israel, together with senators and congressmen, is quite a wonderful demonstration. But when it comes to positions on how Israel should see itself and go forward in terms of what's called the peace process, there is a great distinction between those of us here, religious Zionists, people from the CPAC world, which would include even evangelical Christians. It does differ dramatically from the official AIPAC positions.
Now, it's called young Jewish conservatives, but it's not young Orthodox conservatives, but are conservative attitudes spread among the various segments of Judaism?
Yes, now it's going to be more prevalent within the Orthodox world, but there are, of course, people in the non-Orthodox world that have very good, strong positions regarding Israel. For example, we do believe that the legitimacy of Israel relies, number one, on our biblical roots. And there are many people who might not be Orthodox, but they believe in the biblical roots, and they believe that there's a God who gave the land of Israel to the Jewish people. It's also the land that we built. It was barren for a couple of thousand years. We built it. We made the deserts bloom. We belong there. And also, many of us, including tens of millions of Americans, don't look at the Palestinians as a nation. There was no nationality of Palestine, and we don't see that they have any right to the particular area that always historically belonged to the Jewish people.
So President Trump, his policy reflects that. Why is there so much opposition to President Trump's embracing of the notion of Palestinian rejectionism as anathema to a peace process?
Well, the president represents a view of Israel that's very different than most Jews who belong to the Democrat Party and are liberals, most Jews maintain. He has a position that conforms more to what we in the religious Zionist community maintain, to what evangelicals maintain, and to what many very strong conservatives maintain regarding Israel. And we look at Israel as someone that in this whole conflict is really 99% in the right, and that the other side is actually trying to take land that belongs to the Jewish people. They're the ones that in a way are trying to occupy what is really Jewish land. So many Jews, because they're liberals, because they're Democrats, they don't appreciate, they don't even agree with what the president feels regarding Israel. Thank God we have this president.
But what about the survey that declared or that revealed that across Jewish Americans, Democrats in particular would vote for any Democrat, doesn't matter who, in order to defeat President Trump, who has been so good for Israel and against Islamism, which is the mortal enemy of Judaism?
Well, unfortunately, most Jews, although they believe that Israel has a right to exist, and to that I say, like, big deal. Of course it has a right to exist like any other country, but most Jews, Israel is not their priority. Their priority is what they call tikkun olam, which is the liberal social justice agenda.
What does that mean?
Tikkun olam, in their view, is repairing the world. Now, historically, what tikkun olam meant, notifying the world that there is a God. But they basically have redefined it to mean social engineering, not only nationally, but internationally, to social engineer the world to a more of a socialist agenda, national health care, open borders. So they don't agree with President Trump, not on Israel, and they have a completely different agenda. So it does show us that, number one, Israel is not their priority, and number two, what does show us that they in general have a much more what I would call left-wing European view of Israel. They want Israel to exist, but 9 times out of 10, they agree with the left more than they do agree with the Netanyahu government.
Are we living now really in a fool's paradise that people are taking for granted the conditions that President Trump has put forward, that the Jews are not chagrined, are not opposed so much, or within the Democrat Party, are Jews actually opposed?
I think that people have to realize that the Jewish community today is not the Jewish community of our fathers and grandfathers. And they're going to vote for who has the liberal position. That's become, for many of them, that's their religion. Their Judaism is not Israel. Their Judaism is not about what is best for the defense of the Jewish people. It's what is best for the liberal agenda. They are first and foremost part of that liberal agenda, and they see themselves primarily as a minority, and within that minority category, they happen to be the Jewish minority, but they identify more with blacks or with Palestinians or with any type of grievance group more than they do with the average American.
But among modern Orthodox, there's a lot of Democrat dogma as part of their own doctrine.
Yeah, well, there is more among the modern Orthodox than the more conservative wing within Orthodoxy. Part of the problem is that modern Orthodox, in trying to be what they consider modern, they're trying to get out of what they call tribalism, and they want to be more integrated into the intersectionality. They think that that is what is modern, and so they do tend towards those types of ways of thinking. I think it's quite dangerous to the Orthodox community, because if you look at the Chumash, you look at the Torah, there's nothing more central than the idea of Israel and Shabbat. It's very central. And to say that you believe in the existence of Israel means nothing. Everybody believes that France has a right to exist. The Congo does. But it's how much you're willing to look at Israel as something particularly Jewish, promised to the Jewish people, which means their borders, their right of defense. And so we do have incursions into some of the more left wing of the modern Orthodox, but also remember, the modern Orthodox has also given us religious Zionism as well.
Let's talk about anti-Semitism from minorities, and by that I mean particularly from Muslims and Arabs,
Right.
and from blacks and Hispanics, which have been manifested in the New York area around Hanukkah 2019 in attacks on individuals, not just on the Israeli consulate, which would be a political act, but actually against Jews. And this is an issue that in New York City has not been, under Mayor Bill de Blasio, has not been prosecuted, even spoken out against street crimes against visibly Orthodox Jews. What's the holdup within the Democrat mindset?
I think that's a very important issue that you bring up. I wrote an article about it. It's over a year old. I think I was the first one to publicly speak about the left-wing anti-Semitism coming from academia on campus, Muslim groups coming, especially in New York, from the black community, certain segments of the black community, Muslim community, Hispanic community, the beatings, the chasings, the name-calling, the harassing. See, up until then, the establishment Jewish organizations and the ADL, they were very comfortable targeting and pointing a finger at right-wing, because they don't like the right wing to begin with, so they were able to parlay this into their political agenda. But the anti-Semitism coming to America, the more danger, is coming more repeatedly from the left wing, and it's more dangerous because the left owns the culture. Everybody agrees, everybody in the country, and law enforcement too, that right-wing anti-Semitism has to be stopped. Nobody wants the KKK, nobody wants the neo-Nazis. However, we don't see people trying to stop what's going on campus, and we see people out of political correctness afraid to point to the anti-Semitism among minorities, if it's the Islamic or if it's the black or the Hispanic community. So it's more dangerous that way, not only because it's more widespread, but because the people in the official position to stop it are reluctant to do it. It's not politically correct. They're also on the left.
But wasn't there this big march across the Brooklyn Bridge?
The march across the Brooklyn Bridge, I'm glad they had it, and it went from Manhattan down across the bridge into downtown Brooklyn. That was mostly a face-saving demonstration for those Democrats who had not done anything. Chuck Schumer had not done, Nita Lowey, Elliot Engel, all these people that were allowing Ilhan Omar to sit on these committees. and all these people that were allowing Rashida Tlaib and Cortez, who were spewing forth this anti-Israel, anti-Semitic rhetoric, and they were saying nothing and doing nothing. And even Chuck Schumer lives in Brooklyn. He did nothing, and this is his own district. This is where he lived. This was a chance for them to be able to take 2 hours out of an afternoon and say that we're against anti-Semitism. But even then, they didn't point to the source that was coming out of the black community or the Islamic community or the left wing or the campuses. They didn't point to that. So this was more of a chance for them to say, okay, it was really a whitewash. I did not attend that. I'm glad people do, because any demonstration against anti-Semitism is fine. But I'm in this. I'm in this organizational world, and I know that this was made precisely to be a whitewash. Just look also at the speakers list. It was mostly Democrats. But it's no big deal to say that you're against anti-Semitism. The big deal is to admit that it's in your own ranks on the left. It's in your own ranks in the Democrat Party, and they didn't do it.